What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Vinland Saga Season 2. This is episode 22, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, with me as always, I have Bluesped.
Mm-hmm. Well, this episode is, of course, mainly focused on Thorfinn still wanting to get that meeting with Canute. But in order to do that, he has to pretty much take 100 blows from one of Canute's men in order to see Canute himself. So we pretty much it gets to the point where Thorfinn gets at least about 30 some odd blows to the face before he ends up getting knocked down. And that's of course where Einar comes in and tries to stop the whole thing. But Thorfinn is of course insistent in wanting to take the remaining punches in order to see Canute. So it just basically just continues until
well, they find out that the soldiers are betting on how many hits Thorfinn would be able to take, and they bet on 100, and Thorfinn decides to bet on himself that he'd be able to take 100 hits.
Yeah, I think I think it was the men who initially thought he was going to go down in under 20 blows or something.
Yeah.
But
instead of betting on money, he wants to bet on the fact that, or bet on being able to speak to Canute.
Yeah, and eventually it continues until the guy punching Thorfinn eventually collapses from exhaustion. But he does manage to, I guess you could technically say he hit him 100 times, but I guess the last two hits were didn't really have enough force in them.
Well, he was just so worn out at that point that he wasn't really able to punch him with any kind of force.
Yeah. So,
although Thorfinn's face is pretty messed up because one of his eyes is completely swollen, he can't even see out of it.
Yeah, and same with his nose. His nose is I don't know if it got shattered at one point. Probably might be.
Well, if he had a pretty good strategy for taking the hits, because he was getting hit on the side of his face and not taking a direct blow on to his face, so that the hits wouldn't really do as much damage that way.
Yeah, but I still question if how if and when he got a blow to the nose at one point, but it's hard.
It's probably when he got punched square in the face in that one scene.
Possibly. I mean,
if you remember.
Yeah, the amount of swelling he would have gotten, might have taken sometime during the remaining blows from that guy.
Yeah. His name is Drott.
Yeah, Drott. Okay. So eventually, Wolf agrees to get Thorfinn to meet with Canute, but of course he asks why he did not fight back, and Thorfinn just replies that this entire battle for the farm it's not their battle, and it's only a dispute between both Canute and Kettle, which he says it could easily be settled by a game of I forgot what the name of this game is. I kind of looked it up. It's more of a Norse version of chess or checkers or something. I don't know how it's played, but of course this amuses Wolf, and of course Wolf agrees to take Thorfinn and Einar to Canute, and of course Thorfinn of course finally meets Canute for the first time ever since, I think he said it's been 4 years since they last saw each other, and of course Thorfinn apologizes to Canute after giving him that scar on the left side of his cheek.
Yeah, and then of course Canute points out how he thinks that Thorfinn has definitely changed, but he still recognizes him as being Thorfinn.
Yeah, and of course Canute apologizes to Thorfinn in turn for what happened to Askeladd. But of course the main reason Thorfinn is there is of course he's pleading with Canute to pretty much end this whole fight altogether. But of course Canute refuses, and he explains that he can only unite the entire country under his rule. So they'll supposedly under his rule there will be peace. But of course,
he points out that that Omar had killed had killed some of his men, which is why the conflict initially started, and that was why he decided to requisition Kettle's land in the first place.
Well, we know that's a lie, because
Well, yeah, of course we know that.
Yeah, I mean, Canute was the one who set up the whole situation to provoke Olmar to attack his men in the first place. But and of course that in turn that included Olmar's brother to get involved as well. But anyway, Canute says that he, well, actually, no. Einar, of course, confronts Canute that this whole fight for the farm is completely meaningless, and he points out his own troubles with his village being attacked by Vikings at least 2 different times, and of course, and all pretty much everyone that he's lost over the years because of those attacks. And of course, Canute refutes that he's the only one who can unite the Vikings under his rule. So there will be some semblance of peace, I guess. But for Thorfinn and Einar, of course, they don't really see it that way. So pretty much the episode leaves us off in a bit of a cliffhanger during this conversation. So I guess we'll get to see the rest of it probably by next week.
Yeah, well, there's a few things too. Canute basically says that I kind of like that section where he was just kind of talking about he's trying to take on God, because he's powerless to, and he kind of demonstrates this by saying he's powerless to stop the currents or the ocean's waves, and that God controls that. And that he's trying to basically unify everybody against God or something, which, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Vikings, of course, were pretty superstitious, so I mean, I guess it's not too much of a stretch to think they might believe they could take on God or whatever, but yeah, like you said, he's also trying to build a paradise, which he had talked with Thorfinn about, I guess, in season 1. And Thorfinn kind of brings that up, and Canute, of course, still he of course mentions he still believes in what he said, and it does end in the episode does also end in an interesting way, because Canute basically challenges Thorfinn, in order to stop me, you're going to have to kill me. And Thorfinn has, of course, adopted the idea of more or less complete pacifism, and he believes that he can negotiate things with Canute without resorting to violence. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Thorfinn handles this situation, whether or not he's going to be forced to do something to Canute, or if he can actually find a way to still somehow reason with him, because Canute pretty much is adamantly refusing to leave the farm, and he's pretty much set in what he's planning on doing, and he's saying that Thorfinn is pretty much just going to have to kill him if he wants to stop him at all.
Well, there's also the fact that Snake and Olmar are also there, and of course Olmar arrived there just so he can negotiate a surrender to Canute in order to pretty much stop the bloodshed. So that could be a possibility.
It's funny because of course Thorfinn kind of is the one who's at the moment trying to do that. I feel like this might have maybe a little bit more weight coming from Olmar because of his position and the fact that or at least, Canute kind of did at least set him up to have started this. So it's possible that he could step in and help out somehow. But I mean, from what we know about Olmar, I'm not so sure how much he's going to really be able to help.
I mean, the best he can do is just, to negotiate that surrender and hopefully end things from there. But that all depends on what moves Canute is going to end up doing, whether or not he will accept those terms, or he'll, I don't know, maybe just end up killing Olmar as an example, for his rule or something like that. But it's hard to tell, considering that Canute is a much different person than we saw back in the first season.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought this was a great episode. Of course, there was a lot of build up to this this meeting between Thorfinn and Canute, and I thought they did it pretty well. It was interesting to see the two of them interact again after it'd been 4 years, and they're kind of completely different people for I would say for the most part. So, and it's kind of like it's just funny how it seems like there was just I feel like we've pointed this out before, but it feels like there was definitely like a role reversal with the Thorfinn and Canute, where Canute feels more like Thorfinn before the time skip, and then the current version of Thorfinn feels a little bit like Canute, but also kind of different too.
Yeah, pretty much Thorfinn, adopting Canute's ideals before like the whole situation with Askeladd.
Yeah.
So so we'll have to see next week on what's going to happen. Whether or not Canute is really going to agree to, I guess, accept those terms of surrender, or maybe Thorfinn at least trying in some ways to convince Canute to stop the fighting.
Yeah. So that all being said, guys, until next time, we will see you all later.